Fear is our most powerful negative emotion. It's a very strong motivator. When we fear something happening and that fear gets too strong, we're motivated very strongly to take some sort of action to prevent that thing from possibly happening. We fear experiences, we fear situations, and we fear the associated negative emotions that go with those experiences. And we also fear potential physical pain as well that go with those experiences and situations. These experiences, these situations, they usually involve yourself or other people or objects, either tangible or intangible objects. And when I say tangible, intangible, I mean either something you can physically touch, or you might also fear something happening with something intangible like money, for example. I've really come to notice that fear is much deeper than an emotion. It's this kind of primal, unconscious part of us that has this sneaky way of manipulating our conscious, logical minds. I think there's two kind of types of things that we fear. The first thing that we fear is generating a negative experience as a result of our actions. So we're afraid that if we perform some particular action, that as a result of that, something bad could happen and we won't enjoy that experience, and it'll probably be associated with negative emotions and possibly even physical pain. And the second thing we fear is something just happening to us. So we fear just as we live our lives, something bad could potentially just happen to us, not through any doing of our own, but just that bad things happen and it could happen to us. Now, if you know what your customers are afraid of, if you know what they fear, if you know what they want to do but are hesitant to do because they fear a potential negative outcome, a negative experience, and the associated negative emotions of that experience, or if you know what they're afraid of imminently happening to them, and you can take away that fear, i.e. you can show them how to act without any possible chance of a negative outcome, or you can put in place a barrier to prevent something negative happening to them, then they'll pay you a lot of money for taking away those fears. Let's look at these two categories in a bit closer detail with some examples. All right, the first one is people fear a potential negative outcome, a negative experience associated with some negative emotions, possibly even physical pain, as a result of them performing some particular action. Let me give you an example of this. It's a common example, you can probably relate to it. If it's not relevant for you now, it probably has been maybe sometime in the past, or maybe it will be relevant to you in the future. So, you're single. You're talking to a friend, and then they point out an attractive person, and they tell you, you should go and talk to them. And you look over, and you see that that person is indeed attractive, and you feel your desire for them. Okay, that's your first thought, just rapidly, oh wow, yeah, I desire that person. But then, a fraction of a second later, the fear center of your brain performs the following analysis. It goes, oh yes, that person is attractive, but if I go and talk to them, there's the chance that I might get rejected and I would feel the emotion of embarrassment, and I want to avoid that. Well, what I'll tell the rational brain is some excuse so that we can not act and therefore avoid rejection. And then the next thing you know, you're turning back to your friend and you're telling them, nah, they're too tall, not my type. You know, it's either too tall or too short, or they've got brown hair or they've got blonde hair. It's all the same. Now, you didn't kind of like logically weigh it up and make a rational decision that rejection was likely and that you couldn't deal with that. It was more a primal, unconscious fear of rejection and embarrassment that prevented you from taking action that could lead to something you want. In the example, you saw something you wanted, the attractive person, you identified the action that could get you what you want, you know, a conversation with that attractive person, but then your fear center identified risk of a negative outcome and it caused you to not act. So I want to suggest to you that the lives of your customers are filled with experiences just like this. Day in, day out, they're aware of and they identify actions that they could perform that would get them what they want, but they can't do those actions because they fear a potential negative outcome, a horrible experience linked with negative emotions, maybe even physical pain. When you ask yourself, what do my customers fear? For this particular type of fear, you really want to know what are the actions that your customer knows will get them what they want, but they're not taking those actions because the fear center of the brain is stopping them. So your customer wants a desired outcome. There's something that they want. And they might even know what they have to do to get it, but every time they consider doing it, their fear stops them. The fear center of their brain is constantly making up excuses and preventing them from acting. And when they don't act, they don't get what they want. Okay, you have to identify these fears that your customer has, and you have to show them that you understand them and can relate to them. And of course, then you have to show that your product or service is capable of removing those fears. You have to show them that your product or service allows them to act without any possibility of a negative outcome. So when you take away your customer's fears, that's what you're doing. You're allowing them to act in a way that helps them get their goal without the possibility of a negative outcome. So they can just act freely. They can do the things that they know that they have to do. Just bang, hammer it out, take action, take action, take action. And there's no fear of anything bad happening. That's what you have to show your customer that your product or service will do. Okay, the second type of fear is easier to identify. What we're looking for is what your customers fear happening to them through no kind of fault of their own, just something coming along and happening to them. These fears are really easy to sell to. I'll show you what I mean. Consider a customer who owns and lives in a house. Something that they could definitely fear, it's very likely that most people have some level of fear of this, is someone breaking into their house and either stealing from them or hurting them or someone else in their household. So if your product or service is something like a security system that prevents someone breaking into their house and stealing from them or hurting them or their loved ones, and you offer it to them, you're essentially offering to take away the possibility that that bad thing that they fear happening to them can happen. These types of fears are really easy to sell to. You know, if I said to someone, do you fear getting older and dying? And, the likely answer is yes. And I said, what if for $100, I could give you a system that will prevent aging and you'll never die? Sale. Sale. Obvious sale. Because I'm taking away the possibility of a bad thing happening to them. So are you getting this now? Human beings want to avoid pain. They don't want bad things to happen to them. What don't your customers want to happen to them? What actions are they avoiding so that they don't cause bad things to happen? And what things do they just hope won't suddenly happen to them? If you can identify these things and then you can be the solution to those fears, if you can offer to take away the possibilities of bad things happening, you can sell very easily to people who fear those things. So it's absolutely essential right now that we do an exercise and figure these things out. What I want you to do is I want you to figure out for your customers, what are their top 10 fears? So I want you to get 5 things that they're afraid of happening as a result of their own actions. And I want you to get 5 things that they're afraid will just happen to them. Think about experiences that happen with the customer themselves, the people around them, the objects that they interact with, either tangible or intangible. Think in terms of their relationships, their health, their wealth. Think in terms of their environment. Think in terms of their behaviors. Think in terms of their competences. Think in terms of their results. Now for bonus points, I want you to write down the emotion that goes with that negative experience or the physical pain that goes with the experience. I'll just list out some emotions for you so that you kind of know how to get started. I'm going to list emotions from something called the EARL, which stands for Emotion, Annotation, and Representation Language, which was proposed by the HUMANE, which stands for Human Machine Interaction Network on Emotion. They classify 48 emotions in total, so I'm going to give you a group of the negative emotions that you can relate to the experiences, the things that you're finding could potentially happen to your customer that they fear. Okay, forceful negative emotions: anger, annoyance, contempt, disgust, irritation. Negative emotions related to not being in control: anxiety, embarrassment, helplessness, powerlessness, worry. Emotions related to negative thoughts: doubt, envy, frustration, guilt, shame. Passive negative emotions: boredom, despair, disappointment, hurt, sadness. Negative emotions related to agitation: stress, shock, tension. So as you write out the emotions, what you'll probably notice is that, wow, human beings are really afraid of the emotions themselves. We actually fear other negative emotions because reality only has the meaning that we attach to it. Nothing's either objectively good or objectively bad. We generally don't like specific situations because they've been anchored to negative emotions. So your exercise again. Write down 5 things that your customer is afraid of happening as a result of their own actions, and write down 5 things that your customer is afraid of simply happening to them without their own input. And I really recommend that you write down the emotions that are related to those experiences, and perhaps the physical pain as well. And for bonus points, I would write down 10 of each instead of 5 of each. Okay, good luck with that, and I will see you in the next section.